Let's talk about integrity. Integrity is the spiritual principle behind the fifth step. The fifth step is admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. So when we talk about integrity as it pertains to the steps, what it's saying is to tell all of your story. God, of course, knows your story, but a lot of times you use your sponsor or a priest, but you choose one person and you tell them the exact nature of your wrongs. You tell them basically everything you've ever done. It's almost like a confessional, but you have to be thorough. My favorite definition of the word integrity is to always do the right thing, especially when nobody's looking. You know, it's really easy to do the right thing when eyes are on you and, everybody knows what you're doing. But if you do the right thing when nobody's looking, and then that speaks volumes about who you really are and how much your character has grown and how much it comes into play for the things you do in everyday life. You know, it's not enough just to abide by the golden rule of treating others the way you would have them treat you. It's about always doing the right thing, even when it hurts. If getting sober was easy, everybody would do it. Everybody that needed it would do it. But the program is not for everybody who needs it. It's for everybody who wants it and is willing to do the things that they have to do in order to get sober, which leads us directly into step 6, which is about willingness. Willingness is the principle behind step 6. Step 6 is we're entirely ready to have God remove all of these defects of character. So we begin to see in steps 5 and 6 how they work together. So I'm talking about my character defects in step 5, and I'm being honest like I was in step 1 about who I am. And I've done an entire moral inventory of myself in step 4. And now I tell somebody, and now I have to be willing to allow God to remove those defects of character. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that I never exhibit bad behavior and I never act out on my character defects. It means that I begin to notice when I do those things more often, and I try to correct them immediately, which we'll talk about in step 10. But if I can just be willing to do the right thing. I know when I first was in recovery, I came home. I spent 6 months in a sober living house. I stayed in treatment for 30 days. They said, "Oh, you're not ready." I thought I was. They're right, I wasn't. But I stayed another 5 months. So I was in recovery in a treatment center for 6 months total, including the halfway house. And I wanted to go back to work. And there was this little old lady, Miss Polly Bells, and she said to me, "I'd like for you to drive up here every Sunday and join our aftercare class." And I got sober in Knoxville. It's only an hour and a half, but I said, "Miss Polly, I don't want to drive all the way to Knoxville every Sunday." And she said, "Well, how far would you go to get sober?" And I told the story last year about how I was beaten 90-0 to get away from my girlfriend and get home to the dope man. And that's when she said, "Then I'll see you every Sunday," if y'all remember that story from last year. I had to be willing to do what she said. I had to be willing to do things that, I should know how to live as an adult by this point in my life, but I didn't. I had to have Miss Polly teach me what was right, and that I had to be willing to go to any length to get sober, and that speaks volumes. If I'm not willing to go to any length, it's probably not going to stick. My favorite line in the big book is that the only troubles I have are those that I cause for myself when I break out in a rash of self-will. Don't get self-will and willingness confused. Self-will is often a bad thing. God gave us self-will. Adam and Eve ate from the tree. So self-will hardly ever works out to our advantage. But if I can have faith in God the way I did in step 3 to restore me to sanity like I wanted him to in step 2, then my self-will becomes more about others, when I act out in my own self-will, but it's in the interest of others and it's in the interest of the greater good. You know, it says, God says we're supposed to serve others and serve the poor like Jesus did. And that's kind of like what the Launchpad is doing. We're serving people who are not as well off as us so that they can become better human beings and grow and give back to people that need it just like they do today. There'll be somebody that they can help tomorrow. So join us tomorrow to talk about steps 7 and 8.